Players, past legends. Past legends.
Today we're privileged to have Tony Symonds on the line. Simo at Glenelg, 81 to 86, 88 to 92, 225 games, 230 goals, dual premiership player in 85 and 86. And of course, with Glenelg winning the flag, it was appropriate to have a Glenelg person with us, and it was meant to be the last week, but Pete was crook. Also a year at Hawthorn, also coached Glenelg in 95 and 96, but a real fanatical Bay man. Welcome aboard, Simo.
Thank you, boys. Nice to have a chat.
Thanks for joining us, mate. Like we do with most of our guests, we like to find out where it all started. Where did you play your junior footy? What was your junior club, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, well, I didn't really have a junior club. I went through Sacred Heart College for my entire schooling, and a lot of my mates went out to other footy clubs, but I sort of didn't. So I sort of staggered my way through school and Sacred Heart system, and then went straight out to Glenelg to play under 17s in 1979. Sort of straight from second 18s at Sacred Heart. Never made the first.
Oh wow! See, some illustrious other people in that same sort of boat. Yeah. Rick Davies playing mainly third 18 at Prince's and that. So, and I didn't realise that, Simo.
We used to talk about that, Rick and I, when we were comparing our failures at Hawthorn. We often joked about him playing second or third 18, and I think it was PAC, I think he was.
Yes.
But me at Sacred Heart, so just couldn't crack it. I was pretty small in those days, and to be fair, I think the bloke who was coached in the first 18 in those days, brother Des Tuck, who was a ripper, was more concerned about my light frame really than playing me. So in a way, they might have done me a favour. Who knows?
Of course, at Glenelg, then you've always been a figure at the Bay, and sort of that group, the Fantastic Seven, which obviously probably caused a lot of damage on Adelaide nightclubs and all that side of things. Simo.
Well, it nearly didn't happen. I remember playing under 17s when I just turned 17, so that was early 1979, and I was struggling to get a game. I'd sort of been on the bench, and Johnny Gordon, who just died recently, sadly, was an old South Adelaide man, was a ripper as well. And we got through to about June, and we only had 18 blokes fit. So I thought, I'm finally going to get started in the 18. They brought two blokes back who they'd sacked in February and put one of them into the side ahead of me. So I'm sort of sitting there before the game at Glenelg in tears, thinking, this is it, I've had enough, I'm going. Unfortunately, I stayed, and bloke did a hammy, and I think late in the first quarter, early in the second quarter, bloke called Dave Conway, and I got on and played pretty well. I think more out of anger, and sort of held my spot for the rest of the year in under 17s, and then progressed on to under 19s the following year. So it got a bit tight at one stage about whether I'd ever survive there, coming off a average career at Sacred Heart as well. But things started to turn. I got a bit more confidence, and a year or so after that, I was playing seniors, which was great.
And then that group sort of really, you stuck together. That real group's been very tight, and it really still now.
Yeah, well, the Magnificent Seven, as we called ourselves, it really probably should have come from someone else, but we decided that to do. And Walshy and Peter Maynard and Chris Duthie and Tony McGuinness and Chris McDermott and Stephen Kernahan, it was a sort of fair group coming through. And, Stephen and Chris and myself were playing under 17s together in 1979, or at least early in the year before Stephen and I think Chris both got sort of promoted up the tree a bit. And I remember I didn't really sort of wait for the crumbs. If Stephen was jumping for it, I'd just keep running, because 19 times out of 20 he'd mark it and turn around and you'd be 40 metres down the ground on your own. So probably a bad habit, but you could sort of see he was a class above, and we just sort of played to his strengths. So, but we were tight, and In those days, no mobile phones or whatever. So if one of you was going out somewhere on a Saturday night or a Sunday, you'd sort of ring one or two of the other boys and they'd ring the other guys and you'd all meet up. In those days, you had to meet at the prescribed time because no one had a phone to ring each other.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we were very, very tight and still very close, a lot of us today, for sure.
So with that, I'm 1 year different with you, but with my birthday, same with you being February, with me being January, I ended up sort of with that older group in front of me. Did play a game, well, I didn't make the Norwood High under 13A side, but against Brighton, where we had John Hall and Michael Palm, and beat Brighton, and Sticks kicked 7, and we still won. So yeah,
really?
I do remember that. And
they were hard to beat in those days. I know that because they had, a lot of good footballers. And I think Tony McGuinness had headed over there in his last year. He might have been a year younger than Chris and Stephen, but I think he was playing, and they had gun sides in those days. And it's really sad now. A lot of these schools don't have a team anymore.
Yeah, and with Bone, I've always wondered how high Bone could have gone in cricket. Mm-hmm. He was him and Sticks, mate. Sticks was just tall, as we know, right back then. He was actually bowled off the wrong foot. He was unorthodox as a cricketer, where Bone was a gun keeper. And I actually filled in at a state primary school game, Pete, as made up the numbers, and Bone ran me out without facing a ball. So I've always had that with Bone ever since. But I reckon I'm a mile in front of the beers I've got out of that over the years, because I certainly wouldn't have made any runs anyway. So, yeah. Yes.
We used to play a lot of backyard cricket at the Kernahan House in Wilton Avenue there, and he was hard to face, Stephen. It was like facing a windmill, and he's bowling off the wrong foot, and he was quick and all that. So that was sort of a bit nasty back in the day.
Oh, I can imagine it would have always been competitive. Yes.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Go through. So your league debut in 81. Simon, go through that, mate.
Yeah, well, Steve Highwood was our seconds coach in those days, and we all loved the ace. And he came up to me a couple of weeks before that, sort of early June, said, "There's a state game in a few weeks. We'll have a few out, and you'll be playing league football." And I'd never considered it at that stage, sort of early 1981. And anyway, John Halbert was very good to a lot of us kids in those days, and I had reasonable skills, and coming from where he had it stirred, he sort of liked that. So I think we had 6 or 7 guys on the state side: Ralph Sewell, Paul Weston, Cornsey, Carey, Jimmy LaHoo, Keith Coleman, all those blokes. And so I got picked, and we played Woodville at Woodville. I stood the great Ian Detman, and he was my first opponent.
Jeez, a couple of lunatics there.
Who's who?
Yeah, he was a nasty piece of work. Looking back,
good
though,
man.
he wasn't. He was
good man, Ditto. Yep.
These days, and anyway, we were down. I remember we were down at quarter time or half time, and in those days we used to beat Woodville, routinely. But we got back and we beat them by 3 or 4 goals, I think. And then all the guys came back the following week from the state side, and I held my spot, which was just about a bigger thrill, really.
Yeah, it's fair.
We played Sturt at Footy Park, and all those guys came back in the side, so I got a chance to play with all those guys, which was, just marvellous looking back now as a young 19-year-old kid, and probably 58 kilos, and I'm playing with Corns and Weston and Carey, and I think Ralph Sewell was one of them as well at the time. They sent me a telegram. I remember they sent me a telegram from my first game from Perth, all those boys, so that was nice. And then, unfortunately, my third game, I was only 19, and we had dinner at home the night before the game, and my brothers and I used to play a lot of backyard footy, even in the dark. And I went out and got tangled up with the clothesline, playing 2-on-2 with my brothers, and landed flat on my bum, and I did my groin pretty badly, and I could hardly walk the next day, and I had to play. We played South and Adelaide Oval. I wasn't going to tell Jack Albert what I'd done, so I played, and I only got put on the last 3 or 4 minutes of the game. And I went up to Jack on the Monday and said, "Jack, I've done my groin, I can't play." He said, "But you're only on for 3 minutes." I said, "No, I didn't warm up properly, and I've just done a groin, and believe it or not, I missed 6 weeks. I I just couldn't walk, let alone run. So probably shouldn't have played in the game. Missed 6 games and played the rest of the year in the twos, and we won the flag.
Yeah, I was going to say you won the. Yeah, that's the flag under because Jamie Mason played in that, I reckon.
Yeah, Maso played for sure. I've been in touch with Maso. He's overseas at the moment on a trip. You've probably seen that. So he was a gun, Maso. He just struggled to sort of crack it at Glenelg for whatever reason, and as you know, went to North Adelaide. But Maso played. He was a star back in the day, and we were lucky that year. We beat Port, I think, by a point in the grand final. There was only 1 goal kicked for the southern end, I think, for the whole game, and we kicked it, late in the last quarter to win the game. So always good beating Port with seniors or reserves. We didn't do it much on the seniors, so we take it when we can get it.
Now you're doing a little bit of research. You're a wingman. Were you a dashing wingman, a traditional dashing wingman?
I wouldn't say I was that quick. A lot of people thought I was, but I wasn't. I had probably reasonable ability to read the play, a couple of steps ahead. So I was pretty fit, so I'd sort of spend all day running. In those days, you tended to stand the same guy most of the game.
Yes, it was a real battle of the wingmen back then.
Yeah. So I always thought I was fitter than most blokes. So I sort of just run just for the sake of it, really, just because I sort of, in my own mind, the bloke on me halfway through the third quarter would start struggling and I'd still be going pretty strong. So that was always part of my plan. Quite honestly, sometimes I'd just say to the bloke, "Come on, mate, let's go for a run." And the bloke would look at it and go, "What?" I'd say, "Come on, let's go." And there was no reason for it. It was just a matter of I was trying to,
mind games,
mind games and run them down a bit. And normally the last quarter, and we had a good side too, most of the time. So you sort of take a risk and run forward of the play a lot in those days because the game wasn't as structured as it is today. So sometimes it didn't work and you'd get, you'd be in strife from the coach. But most of the time you had freedom to sort of improvise a bit and make stuff happen. And, talking to Stephen Stretch sometimes these days and Andrew Page and some of those guys, Torrens were a bit limited at the time and it was easy being a wingman in a good side. So you sort of tried to take advantage of it a bit. But the game was very different and you weren't sort of quite as accountable as you are now.
I remember you playing the 82 grand final, Simon?
I played in the seniors in 82. Yeah.
Well, that was a great day, Yep.
Yeah, I think we came from 5th that year in the finals, and I was on the bench a lot. I think I played maybe 17 games that year, and I reckon I was on the bench for about 12 or 13 of them. But the game was just changing. The interchange bench had come in the previous few years, and they were starting to work out how best to use that. And I held my spot, for the latter part of the year, and after being injured a bit earlier in the year again. And, I think we got done by 10 goals by...
Yeah, I was mucking around, obviously, there, Simo. I brought out my Nord... I did bring out my Nord bias there. Look, and I think Glenelg were a bit unlucky then too. Then you only had 6 days on the break after the prelim, and of course that had been the Granger prelim, and Super Carey.
That was a big day, a big couple of weeks. The Granger thing, and it was a wet day, that prelim, and there was a lot of pressure on it. It was a hard fought game, and obviously we got over the line by a point. And then, as you know, grand final day was hot.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing a couple of our blokes running up and down the spot early in the second quarter, and I thought, well, that's not going to be good. But at the back of my mind, I thought I'll probably get on early. But yeah, we were struggling, and as you know, 6 goals from a bloke called Rick Neagle didn't help either.
Yeah, we hear about that occasionally too. Yeah,
I think we have talked about it.
Yeah. Probably haven't heard it today yet, but it's only 1 o'clock. Yeah, 12. Plenty of time for Neags to shove that out. Yeah. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah, but a good grand final, all the same. And I mean, back in the day, the big 4 were alive and well, weren't they?
Yeah.
Port and Sturt, Nord and Glenelg, and you look through the grand finals at that time, and those teams were pretty routinely part of it, weren't they? Which was great.
And then playing under Graham Campbell, of course.
Interesting, that one.
Yeah.
He's a different cat. obviously, start of '83, I think we lost our first 7 before he got sacked.
Yeah.
And a lot of us loved him because he was playing us. And, we threatened to go on strike and all sorts of silly things. And the club reneged and reappointed him. And then we played South the following week and got done by 8 goals again. So we lost our first 8.
8, yeah.
But then got close to making the finals again, as it turned out. I think we had to win maybe 2 of our last 3 or something. I think we lost 2 of our last 3 or something like that.
I think you needed results to go your way as well on memory, I think.
Yeah. So, but we loved Graham and, some funny stories, strangely enough, the one that comes to mind was at the parade, and the rooms were a bit funny in those days. There was sort of the away room had sort of another room attached to it, and you couldn't really see what was in there. And Graham was sure Nord had their spies in there, and that they were listening to the pre-match. So when he pulled the blanket off the whiteboard with the team on there, he read the team out, Christian names only.
Oh my God!
So it was Tony and Stephen and Christopher and Wayne and Alan, and we're sitting there, honestly, trying not to laugh.
Yeah.
And he used to eat a lot of apples, and if you were sitting too close to him at the time, you were getting bits of the apple, and all sorts of stuff was going on. And he's reading the team out, thinking that Nord are listening, and before we ran out one of these games, I remember him saying, and don't forget Neville Roberts, he's a bit like 007, he's got a licence to roam. He's 009.
Jeez, Rocky will love that. I'll bring that up with him. Yeah.
I'll never forget him saying, we're running out, like, laughing.
Oh.
So it sort of didn't go all that well at times. We loved him, but probably wasn't ideal, and in a lot of respects. And at the end of the day, the club made a call on him at the end of '84, and fortunately, probably appointed Studley, which was a great move, and probably the move we needed to sort of discipline us a bit. And
I do have to bring up one quick game with you, Simo. At Glenelg in '83, Pete set the scene for you. The legs are up. It's the last quarter. Glenelg are coming. Nord have coming the ball out of defence. Error. There's a kick out on the full, so it's Glenelg's free.
Mm-hmm.
The Nord guys have run ahead of the ball. Jeff Wilson's marked the ball. I'm sitting next to him in the crowd at Glenelg. Simo's trying to grab the ball off Jeff, and we're yelling at the Nord guys, come back, pick, McDermott up, pick. And Simo's going, give us the fucking ball. And yeah, so I don't know if you can remember that, Simo, but I did say to Jeff I'd bring that up.
I remember there was 2 blokes who wouldn't give me the ball.
Yeah.
On the far side.
Far side, correct. Yep.
And I just wanted to get hold of it and get it on because I think we were down at the time, or the game was close. And you didn't do anything that I wouldn't have done myself. I can tell you that, because the game was in the balance and it was important to get it on. But I do remember it, and I remember swearing, and that wasn't a nice thing to do in front of young people and kids. But you had to do what you had to do.
Oh, it was a bit of fun. It showed the tribal warfare.
Exactly.
You boys were truly the 19th man on that occasion.
Oh, we were
directing traffic, holding onto the ball.
Yeah, Chavo, get back there. Don't worry, it was full on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, I love all that stuff. It was, in a different world, and no one got offended. And, it was just part of the game, really, and you walked off afterwards and you moved on. So better days, really, boys.
What were some of the crowds like back then? Because we sort of
sensational.
We forget about it these days because we don't see how some of the grounds were full to capacity at stages. But what was it like playing in front of a home crowd at Glenelg there with a packed stadium?
I used to just really love it. Like, you'd wake up Saturday mornings, you were playing footy, which is what you sort of lived for in those days. You'd get there early to watch the reserves play and get yourself prepared. You had a routine. There was always a lot of people around, and it sort of you felt bigger than Texas running out onto the ground. And you'd play games at Footy Park, minor round games, and there'd be 17, 18, 20,000 people there. And it was just incredible. You go back to the club, and the club would be chock-a-block full with people, and It was just hard to explain. A bit like playing AFL footy these days in Adelaide for Port or the Crows, where everyone knew you or knows you, and you got sort of looked after. It was a bit like that, not to the same degree, of course, but there was a lot of benefits. Everyone seemed to know you. If you went to buy a pasty or a sandwich, the people would talk football with you. And, one of the guys who owned one of the snack bars around from where I worked in the bank at Brighton there, he was a mad Nord man. And
he's a good man, yep.
Yeah, he was a good man. and, you'd sort of think after the game, you'd be in the showers after the game, slumped on the ground because you'd lost thinking about the week ahead. And you felt like you couldn't even go to the snack bar to get your lunch because you couldn't put up with the grief you're going to get from this guy. And it was just everywhere.
Yeah.
Adelaide was consumed by it, and I really, really loved it.
Oh, but Simon, I think let's go. Those days it was very much we'd all quite often everyone would run into each other at Sam's on the Saturday night, and if we didn't see at Sam's on the Saturday night, you'd be at the Bay Disco on the Sunday night.
Yeah.
And then Lenny. So anything what had happened amongst the players, it was all sorted out by Sunday night, and that was over and done with. And
well, 90% of the blokes you'd meet, as you know, would be great blokes. And, we're all a bit different on the ground and all had our nuances, I suppose. And some people, more physical than others, and some people are smart with their mouth and whatever. But, 9 times out of 10, you'd meet those blokes and say good day and have a quick drink, and one drink might turn into more. And next thing you know, there'd be 30 blokes from 4 or 5 different footy clubs in the back corner at Glenelg having a laugh on a Sunday night and thinking, should better get out of here, got to go to work tomorrow and train tomorrow night. So,
and it didn't matter if you were a player or a supporter, like obviously I'd known, just purely you Glenelg guys, because I'd known Bone and Sticks through cricket at 12, so I'd come over and say hello, and it was everyone knew each other. It was,
no, of course,
it was a great days.
We had some massive nights there over the years, and the odd night where someone from the club would ring Cornsey at midnight on a Sunday night and say, you better get down to the club and get those boys out of there, because I think Harry had told the security guards they weren't allowed to touch us back in the days, and we sort of knew that, and probably a bit arrogant about it. But when we saw Graham walk in at 11:15, 12 on a Sunday night, we knew it was time to go.
Fair call. Mate, before we move on, I'm sure Malcolm's itching to start asking you about your AFL, but you didn't mind
85 and 86.
85, 86.
Yes.
But you didn't mind a sausage roll. 230 goals in 225 games. That's very, very good effort, mate.
Well, I didn't believe in passing it once you run an inside 50. I just couldn't see any sense in that whatsoever. And I actually tell a funny story. John Seabohm was playing full forward for Glenelg one day at Footy Park, and I'd known Steve since he'd come down to Glenelg in the late mid-70s with Mike Armfield, who was my cousin. And Steve's was playing full forward, and I was running along the boundary line at the northern end on my left foot. And in those days, you didn't have to centre it. You just about to have a shot all the time. And I've kicked a left foot check sider on the run, and somehow or other it went through. And everyone's running around, and we didn't high-five in those days. It was just a pat on the arse and well done and all the rest of the blokes saying, great kick. And Steve's walked out from full forward and said, yeah, well, I didn't need bloody lead because I knew you wouldn't pass the bastard anyway. So he was my favourite grumpiest teammate. He was right. I wasn't going to pass it, and he just let me know in an understated manner, but different area, you could get away with it.
Bloody good player too, John Seabohm. Very quietly efficient.
He played 300 something games and came down as a full forward, but you always knew at centre half back he'd punch from behind if he marked it.
Yeah.
He'd just start running wide, and on that left foot he'd kick it 55 metres to you and lace it out. So we were just so fortunate. We just had such a star-studded side in a lot of ways. So, I didn't mind getting on the end of it, boys, and having a shot for goal, that's for sure.
So now the glory years of 85 and 86, and you the real North Glenelg era, really, of 85, 86, 87. Yeah. And, had Glenelg, you'd lost, obviously, a lot of finals. and it's particularly grand finals and that. But
Yeah.
go through the glory times there, mate.
Yeah, well, a lot of the boys, Stephen and Chris McDermott and Tony McGuinness, all played in the 81 losing grand final. And then we all played in 82 and lost. And sort of then I think Peter Carey, 83 we didn't make, 84 Peter Carey got suspended in the finals, I think, against Centrals. And we lost those 2 games in a row from there.
And at the prelim
for
attempting striking, which was crazy. And then the prelim final, at one stage, Glenelg I reckon you were 2 goals 14 at one stage in that prelim against Nord. So it was it was a bit of a crazy game that day as well.
I remember looking at Peter Carey, was on the bench sitting there, and he's looking at me in the last quarter like, do something. And I'm looking at him going, mate, I'm trying. I could just see him pleading to get us over the line. And of course, it didn't happen. So that really stung us a bit. And it probably hurt Graham Campbell more because it probably cost Graham Campbell the job.
Yeah.
And you could argue whether that was right or wrong at the time. But 85, for some reason or other, don't remember being nervous. In those days, you drove yourself to the game and listened to your own music, and you had your car there. You weren't in a bus or anything. And I just remember rolling up. It was a nice warm day, thinking we're going to win. I'm going to play well. Let's go. So there was no nerves or whatever. And I remember feeling the same way in 86, just thinking North were, reasonably warm favourites in 86, but I just don't remember ever thinking that we were going to lose, even though I think it was 85, we were down by nearly 5 goals early in the second quarter.
Yeah, where Robertson bounced the ball in that forward pocket running to the lake southern end, and it bounced away from him. Yeah,
we all talked about that a lot in the days afterwards because our blokes were right under the pump and they had so much of the ball, and our back line was chasing all the time. Remember Wayne Stringer and Chris Duthie chasing Robbo, and Robbo sort of bounced it over his shoulder, and then almost still got it back, and somehow or other Wayne laid a tackle and Duth got it out of there, and I think Kimmy Hosman ended up kicking it. I haven't seen it for years, but Tony Hall might have got on the end of it, and instead of us being 35 points down, I think we went down and kicked the goal. It was 23 points. So, and I do remember standing on the wing, on the grandstand wing, looking at it when we were 29 points down. I think David Tiller kicked the goal, and I looked down forward line. I thought, well, Kernahan hasn't hardly had a touch yet. Stephen Copping hasn't had a touch yet. I remember thinking we'll still win.
Okay.
Which I don't know why, probably youthful exuberance back in the day, but I really remember thinking that. And I think we went in at half-time 2 goals up after being 5 goals down, the 10-minute mark or something. So and that was pretty much the ball game, and we kicked a goal early in the third quarter, which just made us all feel like, it's going to be our day. So
there were 2 pretty fair targets to kick to, like Kernan. We know he's one of the all-time greats, but Copping, Inspector Gadget arms, which they seem to never stop, and he always marked the ball at the highest height. So he played tall. Right. He played tall. He was a very, very good player.
We had Adam Garton down there too.
Yeah,
I think Adam Garton might have kicked 4 in the grand final in '85, and he was probably getting the 3rd best defender. Back in those days, which gave him a real chance. And the Stringer boys sort of toughened us up a bit, and Scotty Salisbury and big Wayne Henwood sort of run around grunting at people, and he was just a man mountain and good. I remember him ragdoll and Michael Redden, and Michael Redden was a champion bloke and a champion footballer and strong, but not half as strong as Wayne Henwood was. So we sort of had an incredible team, and probably looking back to lose Kernahan and McGuinness at the end of that grand final, still win it the following year as underdogs was probably even a greater achievement in some respects.